Hello, welcome to Practicing Life podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Pitzer. I want to welcome Melanie Medland to Practicing Life podcast. Melanie is the CEO of Beautiful Conversations and is a communication coach who works with individuals, families, and management teams by empowering them to connect to others with clarity and kindness. She is known to empower parents by assisting them to change their relationship with teens and is a mom herself. So, welcome to the show, Melanie. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be here, Ashley.
And so, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on to this podcast is because you're dealing with a subject on many people's minds, dealing with parents. Yes, how do we deal with ourselves? Seriously. But dealing with teenagers, how to connect with them, how to communicate with them. You do a lot of reels on like how to create change. And we know what it's like when teenagers switch from child to teenager, where they go from compliance to, no, I don't want to do anything you say. So let's talk about your story. How did you get here? How did you become what you are today?
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, it is such a huge change, isn't it? It's just massive. And it's for some kids, it's almost like it's an overnight sensation that they suddenly their friends become more important, and all of a sudden they're trying out new values and a new way of being. And that's actually what the teenage years are designed to do. So they're meant to be there for kids to start to find themselves. And I always say to the parents I work with that you want to welcome those challenges in, because this is your child learning how to stand in their own power and how to be themselves, as opposed to, which will serve them well later in life, as opposed to a teenager who's meek, mild, compliant, and then later in life ends up in a relationship where they continue to be meek, mild, and compliant and don't actually get to live the life that they want to live, that they don't know how to express themselves and they don't know how to get their needs met and the wants met. And so much of it is actually really important. And as parents, what a beautiful place to be in, to guide your teenager through that transition. And of course, this is where it comes in to be tricky, because teenagers don't want to listen to us necessarily. They're a bit fed up with us. They've heard us all their lives so far, and they want to try out some new stuff. So it kind of, you want to be in that intersection of being able to listen to what they're telling you and using that to guide your response. Whereas most of us who were all raised this way end up just opening our mouths and saying something automatic. It's a reaction to their behavior. And that was my family for so many years. And I had, I've got my eldest daughter who's now 22, and my twins who are now 20. So I have these three children who are all very close in age, and they were like just reacting to each other as well. And I could really feel I wasn't comfortable with the parent that I was. I was at that stage, we'd had some fairly large family trauma. I was on my own with the kids, and I didn't like myself as a parent. And I also didn't like the way my kids were talking to each other and interacting with each other. So I guess, one of my earlier light bulb moments was that actually I was the parent and it was up to me to make the change, not wait for my kids to start being nice to each other before we could make some changes. So I really sort of embraced and jumped into this transforming communication work. It really was, compassionate and kind to myself as I was learning to change and speak differently with my children so that I could listen and I could guide them. I was really painfully aware that there was no father figure in their lives for them to go to. And so I was mum and dad, and I couldn't do that. I could just be the best parent that I could be. And that was my sort of start of this change in my journey. So
okay.
My eldest daughter had when she was 17, she had a massive mental health teenage storm, I will say, that resulted in an attempted suicide and an emergency trip to hospital. And that really gave me some urgency as well to be able to just be able to guide her, instead of trying to lead her with guilt or aggression, which had been my earlier, and that passive aggressiveness, it had been earlier patterns of mine as a parent. So it was really, I had a lot on the line to turn this family, myself and this family around. So I'll skip to Alex at 22. She's got a one-way ticket and she leaves New Zealand next week. So she's off to explore the big wide world. So she's clearly through her teenage crisis. So that's really lovely. We've had a very happy ending with that.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know how much you know this, but this is kind of what brought me into transformation work and coaching and stuff as well, because I also had my at the time 12, 13-year-old going through the same thing. So and now that I've done the inner work and now that I've changed, you know, you have to be the change. I did not get that for so long. But now I know it. And so
absolutely.
I
remember clearly thinking, I just don't have time for this. Can't you just sort it out? Like that was the toxic thought that was running through my head. It's not my problem. I don't have time for this. I just can't do this. That was so not helpful. And so when we lean into these challenges that our teenagers bring us, we often end up coming out quite transformed ourselves, and as well as teaching them, because they're still sponges for everything we do and say.
Well, they definitely are. And I can so see how my kids model everything. I mean, one of the reasons that my teenager is so mentally healthy and stable is because he saw me make a change. He saw me start to choose myself, and, and he mimicked that. And, I think one of the things that is so strange now, when you're looking back and you have that hindsight where all of the answers are, you can see them so clearly, is my child taught me so much about my shadows, about my work that I wasn't dealing with. And because I wasn't dealing with things, it was like compounding for him in his life.
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot in your clients?
Exactly that.
Okay.
And so many clients that come to me saying, well, they have to do something differently. Like that's, the expectation of the client is on the teenager to change. And it's actually, we've got to peel that back one step. And the expectation is on you to change, because you're never going to get another person to change to the way that you want them to change. The person that you can change, the only control we have over change is ourselves. And being able to change with ourselves. So within ourselves. And that's when you start on that journey, it's like sometimes it's so frustrating because you've got such a lot, it's that consciousness that comes with it, and then it's how you deal with that, and then it's moving into becoming more competent unconsciously, and just doing and saying things that later on you just kind of become your new normal and your new subconscious patterning.
That cognitive distance. It's like when you flip the switch and all of a sudden your brain patterns went from like you have your own resistance over here and you're like, no, this is the way it is. And all of a sudden you start practicing a new way. And then when something happens in the future and, everything goes crazy, you have that new pattern in your brain that makes it hard to go back the other way. If something happens, you're like, no, it can't work that way anymore. I'm not that person. We're not going back to that.
But it takes a long time, and it takes dedicated hard work to actually change those patterns of communication. I mean, they're habits, aren't they? That just habits of speech, but they are just right there, ready to pop out of your mouth if you let them. And they do.
So my teenager right now, I'm like sitting here thinking it's 15. I had to think about that. And that's terrible because we just buy him a car. I should know this. Like we're preparing for the car and the 16-year-old. And
exciting.
But we had this conversation this weekend because I do so much coaching. I do so much inner work, and I talk about it. I talk about it with my kids, my friends. Like it's a lifestyle for me, right? And so my kid was the other day talking about, well, he's not relating to his other peers because when he goes to them with a problem, their emotional maturity isn't there. And so they don't know
Right.
what to do and they don't know how to handle it. And he's, because of me, he's like off the charts, like with the ability to process his own
Yeah.
emotions and think it
Mm,
through. And so he has
mm,
this hard time relating to his
mm,
own peers. And
mm,
I told him, like, instead of looking at this as like a negative thing, like they don't get me, like you are the leader in this, like
mm,
you're helping all of these people. He's like, I know,
mm,
Mom, I coach
mm,
everybody. I'm like,
mm. Yeah.
but you have to go to the source that's best for you. And you have to have that discernment of who is
Mm,
going to help you. You can't look at
mm,
people who are, 10 steps behind you and ask them to help.
mm, mm. Yeah. And how does he feel about that?
I think at times he feels a little isolated because
Yeah.
he's so much further ahead
Mm,
than other people, as far as like being able to process those emotions himself and
mm,
decide what he really wants for himself.
yeah.
But at the same time, like, I guess I can relate to it because I was this way as a kid. He relates to people that are so much older than him.
Yeah.
So
Mm,
yeah, it's kind of
yeah.
one of those things, like,
Mm, mm. And
that
in some
pendulum.
ways, your work is really in guiding him to make friendships with more mature people. And
Mhm.
how is he going to do that when he's kind of stuck in a, clique of 15-year-olds? He goes to
Yeah.
school with them and yeah. So how's he going to meet those people? And how's he going to be able to make wise choices around slightly older people without putting himself in a vulnerable position
Yeah,
as well?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
staying safe. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
older kids may be doing things that he may not want to be doing or is ready for. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
parenting has so many twists to it, because even when, like in my case, even when you do the work and you teach your child and they're doing the work, they
Mhm.
still have their life lessons. It's not
Yeah.
like a piece of cake.
Yeah. Well, in some ways it would it be as interesting if it was a piece of cake?
No, we'd all be, 300
Yeah.
pounds. And so anyway, but
Yeah.
yeah. So what age group do you mostly work with?
I work with
Oh, you work
tweens
with
and
the parents.
teens and the adolescents. Yeah. So it's anywhere really between sort of 10 right through to about 25. It's
Okay.
that big age group of, yeah, working with these parents and I do some work with the teenagers, but I will, and their children, but I'll only work with them if I'm already working with the parent.
Okay. And
I have too many parents who just say, I want you to fix my child. And
oh
that
yeah.
just doesn't work. So that immediately is a red flag that this is, unless you're prepared to come on board, I'm not working with you. So yeah, so I really work with them, and it's, I give them some information about these roadblocks to communication, because there's 18 different roadblocks that we have, and there's 5 different categories. And I can quickly run through them for
Yeah,
listeners.
let's do it.
Um,
Or at
and then
least
once I've got
summarize
that
them.
idea, yeah, I'll give you an example and we'll run off that. And at least, once you've got that information, then you can start auditing yourself and getting a little bit of or auditing your partner. So the categories are, the first one is the fix it. So they're real like solution giving categories that we just so want things to be good for our kids that we're really quick to jump into this. And this is like the most common category. So if you have a child, and so my example would be, if you have a child who won't get out of bed in the mornings for whatever reason, you might jump into the solution giving category of the fix-its. And so you might find yourself ordering. You might go into their room and say something like, just get out of bed. I don't have time for this. Or you might threaten them. You might say, if you don't get up right now, I'm going to come in there and make you get out of bed. And how many people say that? Especially when you yourself as a parent are stressed in the morning and it's, this is a real drag. You might try moralizing with them. You might say something along the lines of, you are old enough to get out of bed at the right time by yourself. I should not need to remind you. Or you might be advising, okay, so here's what you do. You put your alarm clock outside the door. When it goes off, you'll have to get up. And once you're up, you're up. Genius. Or you might fall into the lecturing pattern. You might say, look, I know that getting out of bed isn't a favorite thing for teens. There's a whole lot of research that says that your body clocks are wired differently during these years. But for school years, you are just going to have to make it work somehow. So, there's that kind of category. And I see you smiling away, like possibly some of those things have come out of your mouth at some stage, or someone who knows.
I handle things so differently with my kids. I'm a little
Yeah.
bit of an oddball.
Yeah.
I am a very much a natural consequence.
Yeah.
So I am kind of like, you didn't get out of bed. Oh, that's your problem.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I let them deal. I don't even like when school comes to me and complains, I'm like, you can talk to my kid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really put my kid in the burner. Like I just let him,
Mm.
I let school talk to him.
Yeah.
I know in school's like, you're the parent, you need to be addressing this stuff. And I'm
Mm.
like, no, he needs to know what the consequences are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
And in
you are the
a way, like,
consequences.
yeah. Yeah. If you're going to be there to support him as he's being spoken to by the school, then you are still being the parent.
Yeah, I mean, I am. It's just their viewpoint of,
Mm.
well, I'm not stepping in and helping,
Mm.
but
Mm.
but the thing about it is my husband and I, we both agree to parent differently. So
Yeah.
we do not, I don't want to say co-parent, that's not the right word,
Yeah.
but like we're not parenting from the same patterns. So when you're
Mm.
saying those things, my husband is very much like the get out of the bed because I said
Yeah.
so. Like you got to go to
Yeah.
school, like
Yeah.
toughen up. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's
And
never
that's
gonna
kind of,
work.
yeah, that's solution giving. And after a while, people get resentful. The teenagers get this subconscious message from us that we don't believe that they know what to do, and that they're tired of it always having to be our way, our parents' way, and they want to figure things out for themselves. So they're losing the opportunity to problem solve and grow their problem solving muscles themselves when we're always jumping in. And we often jump in like that with those solutions for the best, with the best of intentions, but the result is that at the end of the day we're not actually empowering our kids to be those independent thinkers and people who run with those consequences as well. Yeah.
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 So that's just one category.
I love it. I love it. And my second kid is 14, but cognitively closer to 5. Have you ever
Sure.
worked with parents that have like, some type of cognitive disability? Because I find relating to the difference between my two kids is just so vast. So like
Mm.
when you were giving those examples and you're running through, I could totally see how, I know how I parent kid A, but the younger kid, I completely parent differently. And I find myself maybe more doing that stuff because it's more like, come on, are you listening to me? And like, and like, I honestly don't know what is getting
Yeah.
through to her. Like,
Yes.
and so I find myself repeating a lot because she has seizures every few seconds.
Right.
So she repeats a lot. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
that, like, so I don't know if you've ever had any type
Mm.
of experience with,
Yeah,
that's
not
the
so
whole.
much with that type of cognitive impairment. More, I do come across kids with autism.
Okay.
Um, and so, yeah, I work with parents with those sorts of teenagers as well.
Do
And
you
that's
find,
really
okay, I was going to say, do you find anything different there?
keeping it simple, like just having, like keeping your speech and communication patterns the same works for those kids. So they like to know that what's coming out of your mouth is what's always going to come out of your mouth, and then if it's not working, then that's the conversation is, okay, I can see that I'm telling you to get up like this and it's not working for you. What would work better? So it's actually going to them and getting some input from them as to what they'd like to see in the way that you
Which,
assist them to get up in the morning.
yeah, is empowering them again.
Yeah, totally.
It's putting ownership on them to
Yeah,
figure out.
yeah, yeah. And but certainly for kids who are a little bit more on that autism spectrum, and we're all there somewhere ourselves,
Mhm.
it's that simpleness of it. Like we don't want to get into complicated stuff.
Yeah, I will tell you, before I became a coach and before I really dived into some of the deeper stuff, one of the things I struggled with, and I went to so many parent counseling groups. And,
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have, so Melanie is from New Zealand, and I don't know how it's different from there to here, but over here, like I went to Love and Logic. That's a very big parenting tool here. So I went to all these things, different behavioral psychologists and everything. And my oldest teen is on the spectrum and was really, really good about pulling me into negotiations.
Yeah.
Oh, I struggled with that big time until I just really
Oh,
stopped
he
trying to
was good
tolerate
at
it.
diverting you, was he?
Oh, he still to this day, I think he's an art, like he's just an artist with
Yeah.
negotiation. I am
Yeah.
impressed. I just sat back and I admire it.
That's so good. That's such a good skill to have. Yeah.
Oh my
In
gosh, it
in
is.
some ways you can turn that to him. When you're needing to get your needs met and you've got some hard deadlines as a parent and boundaries that you want to set, that's one of the tricks of giving that clear message of what you need, is that you just have the basics, that you can see it. You could take a photo of what the issue is, and then that kind of eliminates so many of those little opportunities for those master negotiators to leap in and just divert you, sort of thing. So those setting those I messages, which is something that I teach parents as well. That really, if you've just got it down to less than 20 words and no waffle and just real black and white stuff, I could take a photo of this and,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of my strategies now, as far as, because this is just who he is innately.
Mm,
And so, like, one of my strategies now, it's almost like a horse with blinders on. Like,
yeah,
I just
yeah,
stick to my words.
yeah,
And if I have to, I look down and I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but this is what I'm saying. And I
yeah,
just go
yeah,
into like,
yeah, yeah. Back to
I
me.
love you. You are an awesome kid. Here's
Mm,
what I'm doing.
mm,
Like, I just
mm.
stick to what I am doing.
Yeah,
Bam.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean, I used to at one stage have a problem with a really messy bench, like I'd clean up in the morning before I left for work. And by the time I got home, the teenagers had all been home before me. They'd all made themselves snacks. And there would be collectively between the three of them quite the mess. But no, it wasn't any one person's mess because they'd all sort of contributed. And I tried all kinds of things to try and get around that. And it just wasn't working until one day I said to them, when the bench is left messy, it slows me down and I'm frustrated. And it was like a light bulb went on in their heads, it was just that short clarity that was there, when the bench is left messy. Yes, it's left messy. It slows me down. Yes, it does slow her down. We can't get out to sports practice because mum's still trying to, we're still trying to have tea. And I'm frustrated. Yeah, we can see you're frustrated. It was just that just those three little short things that put together. It was like all of a sudden they had that buy-in to create solutions for themselves. So it's, I had tried so many things until that day. But from that day forward, going forward, we haven't had an issue with messy benches at all. It's those sorts of things that you just want to be able to nail and use that pattern of communication for how to talk with your kids. If that's not let them divert you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I mean, I think that every kid's kind of different. So I don't know how much you find that, one pattern, one strategy maybe works universal versus like, really taking each scenario and making, because I think you offer, if I understand correctly, I think you offer some type of maybe a 10-week parenting course or something along that lines.
Yeah. I do a 4-week parenting course for 2
4 week.
hours
Okay.
each week. So I think I've got another one coming up in September. Yeah, there's one in September. So, but parents can, and what I've found has worked really, really well, it's been really successful, is parents from blended families and split families, where the parents are talking to the extent that they're both there for their kids, because it's not family therapy, but then they come in to be on the same page of the way in which they're communicating with their children.
Yeah.
And so the teenagers are getting the same at both homes. And that's really good, because our master manipulators particular are really good at picking off one parent against another parent, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah. like the one thing is like my kid knows what my weakness is, and he knows what my husband's weakness is. I mean, he knows who to go to for
Yeah.
which thing,
Yeah.
so it's quite different. If my kid wants to stay home from school because he feels slightly sick, he knows to come to me, because I'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, self-care is so important,
Yeah.
Dad's gonna be like, I don't care, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, but there's just different things, and their kids are so smart. They're so
Yeah.
smart.
I know, right? I know. And so it's, so important to be able to guide them through some of the challenges that they face, because so many of these challenges our adolescents now are facing are not what we would ever have dreamed of when we were adolescents.
Yeah. So in your program, do you talk about like the whole dish, like they have social media, they are constantly, oh, I mean, that was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with, as far
Yeah.
as like having a parent and having no control over what my child is exposed to. And kids were texting anonymously through different apps about how awful my kid was, or how they looked, or how they dressed, or, just saying terrible things. And they could, because they could do it anonymously.
Yeah. 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 And it's really that kind of stuff is really damaging for developing psyches. It's really affects their self-esteem, and just the way that they turn up in the world. And so learning how to manage social media, in the end, like when your child becomes an older adolescent, the ultimate goal is that they can manage their own social media themselves. And so that's kind of what you're starting at. But when this is happening to your 10-year-old, it's on a sliding scale. And so you're wanting to be able to support that 10-year-old. And even if the 10-year-old realizes that, yes, in 8 years' time, I will have complete freedom on how I use my device. But at the moment, we're going to break it down. This is going to happen when I'm 17. This is 16. This is 15. This is 14. This is 13. This is 12. This is what we're just agreeing now. And, you can make a contract with your child around things that will suit them for their age, that's really age appropriate as well.
Yeah. And the brain loves predictability. And so if you're setting up the boundary and letting them know what they can predict, I mean, that automatically creates, especially when you start at a young age. Whew,
Yes.
so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I always said, like, we always had a flatmate agreement in place. And I was always like, I'm training you guys to be good flatmates. And so what's this going to look like when you're 18? What are we learning now that's going to feed into this? And they really love that. You get so much buy-in from your kids, because they all want to be good flatmates. They all want to be out there able to negotiate flatting agreements with people that they move into. That kind of stuff is just not taught in schools, and yet it's such a big part of being an adolescent. And they can get really nervous and anxious about these things.
I mean, I find even as an adult, even with all of my skills, I have to stop and pause and evaluate and think about, because there's times when, I have 3 employees that are caregivers for my child, right? And so if something happens, like, oh, you forgot to like do X, Y, and Z, and then I have to have this conversation, but I know that I've had this conversation 10 times with them. It's like you, even as an adult, you get into these sticky communication, like, and it takes a lot of effort to, like I view, and this is the way I coach, is that communication, my ability to communicate to the other person and for you to understand my thoughts is 100% on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if I've communicated it 10 times and it didn't sink through, I'm responsible, not them. I'm not saying it in a way that makes sense to them, that is clicking with them. And so, I even I as an adult, I can get in these like, oh, uncomfortable, like I don't know what to do differently, so, and kids got it coming in every direction. They got teachers, they got parents, they've got jobs if they're old enough.
I've got peers, as well. And the whole peer group thing. And so much of our communication is about trying to get our points across in the world. And yet the trick is to be able to actually listen to what they're saying when you've given your message. So,
that's how you know if it was received.
Yeah. So, you'll hear back from them. what they think about that. And that's what you're wanting to, so quickly we gloss over what their response is. And then we just keep going with ourselves. And then we think, oh, that went well, so I'll add in one more point and, and I'll say something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing I will say I've changed in my parenting style. When I talk to my teenager afterwards, I'll stop and say, like, what did you hear? What did I say to you? Like, what made sense? And one of the things I've learned about my teenager is he doesn't want a conversation to droll on. He'll tell me, get to the point. I'm like, but I said my point. Like, and so I'll be like, this is my point, because he thinks I'm continually like building up this dramatic story, and I'm like, no, I said my point. This is my point. Like, he doesn't need X, Y, and Z. He just needs A. That's it.
Yeah. So he just needs that short, sharp communication. Yeah. And every child is different, so you might find that we're all individuals. So what works for your son might not work for your daughter.
Exactly. It's
She
so
might need a different approach. Which is really lovely as well.
I mean, it only makes me better. It makes me better even out in the world.
Yes.
So what would you like to tell people? What would be like a takeaway that you would want people to know, or an invitation for them to consider? Because I know that you have a lot to offer people. I mean, you've got years of experience and several certifications. You've been doing this for a really long time. This is something that you're very passionate about.
Yeah. Just don't give up on your kid. That's the biggest part of parenting, is to believe that they will be able to figure this out, and just be there to support and guide them is really, even if you don't like what they're telling you, even if you don't like what they're doing, know that don't give up, and don't say, oh, it's fine, do it your way. If you know that they are better than that, just hold that expectation and that hope for them. Even when things aren't going well. So, I mean, people can find me at beautifulconversations.co.nz, and there's all kinds of things there. There's a book. I have a book up, an ebook. So that's been up for about a month now. It's called Teen Talk: The Art and Science of Talking with your teenager. So that's there, and there's several online courses that you can do, and of course there's one-to-one coaching as well. And I do work with management teams as well as families.
That's a lot. See, look how much you have to offer. I had no idea about the ebook, and that's super exciting. So I will put your link and information in the bio. Make sure I have everything that you'd like to share. And we'll put that in the show notes, and
I'll send that through to you. Because I do pop up on Instagram and do some reels, and Facebook, and and I'm on LinkedIn too.
Well, and I've seen a number of your reels, and you just have such pleasant energy, and you're so calm and soothing. And I bet that's got to be really nice for the kids, because kids are used to stressed out parents, and it's so nice to have an adult that is able to open up, have love, listen to you. This is what kids need.
Yeah, they really do. And you don't have to have the answers as a parent. It's okay to say, I don't know, but can we figure this out together? It's actually really empowering.
It really is. Well, I really am so grateful for you coming on and sharing some of your expertise and talking about parenting and communication and helping people to transform their life. So I'm sure this is going to impact a lot of people.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. It's just been wonderful to be here with you today.
Well, thank you, Melanie. Likewise. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Please check out Melanie, check out her Instagram account. I love her reels. There's just lots of just really quick tidbits to help you to kind of keep your mind focused. So I want to tell you all that you matter, and till next time.